Good morning and good evening, Bill. Yeah, so it's my greatest pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor William PENUEL. Actually, I'm very, very indebted to him for agreeing to give this keynote online. We invited him and he really wants to be with us in person, but he's in the middle of too many things, including a review meeting for the National Science Foundation in the US. So within all these, very busy period, he says, I can do it online. So I'm so thankful. So first of all, Professor, many of you, I would expect know Professor PENUEL, but I think it's still my responsibility to introduce him. Bill is the Distinguished Professor of Learning Sciences and Human Development in the School of Education and Institute of Cognitive Science at the University of Colorado, Boulder. He designs and studies curriculum materials, assessments, and professional learning experiences for teachers in STEM education, primarily in science and more recently in AI education. He also studies how contemplative practices and critical inquiry can support educators in cultivating more compassionate learning environments and schools. And a third line of his research focuses on how long-term research practice partnerships can be organized to address systemic inequities in education systems. And I am a great admirer of Bill's work in the area of investigating and supporting scalable innovations in schools. It's really his third line of work. And particularly, he's put forward the idea of infrastructuring, which highlights the need for design at the institutional and systems levels. And in this regard, Bill has developed a research method called design-based implementation research to test what researchers co-design in collaboration with stakeholders. Many of my projects in CITE, in fact, adopts the DBIR, design-based implementation research approach. So we are very, very fortunate to have Bill with us today to talk about responsible innovation in designing AI for education. And so without further ado, may I invite all of you to join me in welcoming Professor PENUEL. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the generous introduction, Nancy. And as she said, Dr. Law said, I'm sorry not to be able to be there with you in person, but I'm also grateful to be able to be with you here online. And I just want to check and make sure people can hear me and that you can see the slides. Maybe a big thumbs up.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So today I'm representing the Institute for Student AI Teaming, as well as playing my role in the Institute of Cognitive Science. And I'm going to talk about responsible innovation in the context of AI design and development. And this phrase here in the title, attending to the how, the for whom, for what, for whom, and with whom, derives from an article that my colleague Thomas Phillip and others who are part of the Institute really wrote to try to raise the attention of cognitive scientists around questions of who is designing, for what purposes, and how do we go about design. And part of design-based implementation research really begins with the formulation of a negotiated goal, as well as involving people in co-design. So I'm going to be talking about that aspect today, about the DBIR, or design-based implementation research model. And I'm also happy to talk about what it might take to infrastructure for AI applications like the one that I'm going to talk about today. So major technology corporations across the globe and philanthropic organizations that have made their fortunes from technology and exert a very large influence on the public, such as the Gates Foundation, Chan Zuckerberg, and venture capital, have really invested billions of dollars into AI for personalization. These areas include tutoring, lesson planning, and while there's a variety of these things, the hugest area where most people's work is focused is on personalization. Meanwhile, educators in schools are confronting AI as a form of what my colleague Justin Wright calls arrival technologies. And in contrast to adoption technologies, these technologies bypass the kind of planning, assessment, and policy making and professional learning that have historically, if not always well, accompanied previous generations of technology integration. In late 2022, ChatGPT arrived on the doorsteps of educators everywhere, and they just had to deal with it. And it's forced a lot of changes and adaptations on the part of teachers to try to figure out how to make good use of it, to establish policies with respect to how to support it. Some of the prior innovations like this that we've encountered in the past are arrival technologies, personal calculators, for example, mobile phones, but generative AI in particular represents a very steep change in both the velocity and nature of technology arrival, as we've seen. And nearly every internet-connected device now suddenly has access to dramatic new capabilities. And my talk today is very much a direct response to this call to think about how we can attend to the purposes or ends of learning and to the powered ways that those ends of learning are defined, negotiated, and developed both for and with others. Every vision for learning implies or explicitly elaborates a social order, one that is guided by a particular vision or understanding of, for example, educational equity. And at this critical moment in time, without more explicit attention to how AI supports specific forms of learning, that is the how and the for what of learning, and an understanding of for whom and with whom we're designing, we run the risk of perpetuating rather than attenuating the inequities that exist, both with respect to the opportunities for learning that people have and our honoring of the different ways that students think and learn together in classrooms and in the wider world. To take up and really answer these questions is challenging, both because of the intense buzz around AI and because it can be hard to see when we're inside a bigger frame that we could actually be questioning and exploring alternatives to. If all we see is this image, we might think this is all that what scissors are like. We might come up with a description in terms of their symmetry, about the shape of the blades and so forth, and not know that there are many potential designs for scissors. To make the analogy to where we are in AI research and education today, right now all of AI is likely to look like a pair of scissors shaped like ChatGPT. I would argue that we need to widen the aperture to see beyond the affordances of generative AI and ChatGPT in particular, but to do so, we've got to use some contrasting cases. And I draw here on Bransford and Schwartz's notion of contrasting cases, where they argue in a well-known paper on transfer that such cases can bring relevant distinctions into focus. They can help us learn to see distinctions that I'll argue with respect to AI are consequential, both in terms of the what of learning with AI and how we need to get there. I want to emphasize these are not distinctions intended to denigrate one approach over another, but rather to help us open up conceptual space to think more broadly about the kinds of educational futures we want and what AI tools might be that can help bring us into that future. AI-related work has been going on for more than 50 years in an area that's getting a lot of attention today, personalization. Intelligent tutoring systems use cognitive principles of learning to subdivide domains into hundreds of smaller components that we usually refer to as knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs. They deliver tasks or problems that are understood as comprising several overlapping KSAs, and dozens of those problems represent a domain. As students proceed through individual tasks and problems in an ITS, Sophisticated algorithms track their mastery of KSAs therein and use this information to recommend the sequence of problems. ITSs also include mechanisms to provide guidance via hints and explanations within an individual task or problem, again, informed by sophisticated algorithms. This detailed tracking of student progress along the KSAs is the primary mechanisms by which an ITS provides adaptive and personalized learning experiences for individual students and is considered to be the main source of their effectiveness. There are several variants and types of personalized learning systems, such as recommender systems that provide Netflix-like suggestions in which problems an attempt next based on prior progress, that do extend beyond this basic characterization, especially in the advent of generative AI. But the above perspective, this perspective really reflects the mainstream of what these can do. I want to show a short video. Hopefully, I forgot to share my audio, but hopefully you'll be able to hear this, that just talks about the promise of personalized learning from ITSs, and this comes from Carnegie Learning.
There's many different variations of math software out there, but they miss the mark a bit. What students really need is software that gives them guidance.
It's easy to tell a student what they got wrong. It's harder to determine and tell them why they got it wrong, and our software does just that.
Our goal at Carnegie Learning is that we produce kids that learn how to think. The features of the software provides them those opportunities to become that self-directed learner.
We're not just picking problems with a prompt and a final answer box. We are really mimicking what a real teacher does teaching.
As you look at the hints and the just-in-time feedback, they're getting 45 minutes of one-on-one guided instruction in a way that a human would talk about it.
Kids can work at their own pace. As they work, the system is collecting data. You suddenly have insights that you've never dreamed of.
There's a whole bunch of fine-grained steps that the student needs to take, and that all of those steps are important to the final answer.
By tracking student interactions as they go step by step through the problem, we get the sort of information that a human tutor would have in a one-on-one interaction with the student, and to constantly learn about how it is that they're learning.
Not only will you know how many problems they're doing and how many workspaces they're working through, but you'll know data about whether your students are going to be successful at the end of the year.
District administrators and superintendents become predictive throughout the entire school year, and they're not surprised at the end when test scores come out.
Rather than, for example, taking a test, teachers are going to have immediate feedback, real-time information about where everyone is.
Well, that information should inform them what goes on in the classroom, and then they can make decisions about how to group kids together based on that data.
The whole idea to provide the teachers the support they need so that they have the time to spend with individual students that need their time.
For students that might be afraid to raise their hand in class, you put them in front of this software, all that's gone. They can ask for help. Nobody knows. It's just a student and a powerful piece of software.
So on the one hand, who wouldn't want this if we could do all this, right? I want you to pay attention, though, to a moment and think about that classroom that you saw. Kids are not interacting with each other at all. They're interacting only with a computer. And as this teacher said, that's a good thing. One kid, one computer, just with each other. Notice also that the argument is made in terms of how these will predict, not improve, predict end-of-year test scores on standardized tests. I want to present to you that this is just one possible vision for how AI could support learning. And it's not necessarily the kind of learning that we might only want to be promoting. For sure, procedural fluency with mathematics, I'm not going to argue against that. But there's a whole lot more to learning and learning with others. And if we don't think about what those visions are to begin with, we may not ever imagine or see a role for AI in supporting those other visions. So I want to talk a little bit about an alternative. Before I do that, I also, though, want to highlight the way that Carnegie has produced the research. This really historically has followed the pursuit of scientific goals related to understanding how much tutors compare with human tutors. And along the way, important products have been developed and field tested through randomized control trials. Teachers have been involved mainly in providing input into designs on the back end, principally with the focus on better addressing current needs to promote wider adoption and better implementation of these systems. This approach design follows what my colleague Don Puerac calls a classic research, design, development, and use, or RDDU paradigm that focuses on translating research into practice rather than establishing a reciprocal relationship between research and practice. As with many other research and development efforts that advocate for this approach, an underlying aim is to develop and offer better research-based principles for learning to inform debates about the means of supporting learning. Again, a different approach. I'm going to talk a little bit about both to the what, for what purpose, and the how, and with whom. Our own work within the Institute for Student AI Teaming builds from a different tradition of scholarship within the field of computer-supported collaborative learning. Like work in intelligent tutors, this work goes back decades, enough to have built up a knowledge base related to how particular kinds of AI-powered tools can support collaborative learning. The tools I'll discuss today are ones that are examples of group awareness tools that either provide information about others' knowledge and contribution, as well as about information related to the social dimensions of collaboration. As with intelligent tutors, large effects have been found with these kinds of tools, though most of the research on them has been conducted in higher education and within completely online environments. We're working in ISAT in K-12 environments and in face-to-face settings, noisy classrooms. We've described our goals as attempting to support learner flourishing. One definition that we can offer is simply that it means using AI to support students in co-constructing knowledge using disciplinary practices and 21st century skills across different domains. Today, I'll offer an even more expansive definition taken from two different sources, mathematician and educator Francis Su and health researcher Sarah Willen. They speak not just to knowing, but to being and doing, and to the idea that if we're flourishing, we are both realizing our own potential and helping others to do the same. Willen in particular speaks to the contingency of flourishing. Flourishing is something we cannot accomplish by ourselves. It's something we can do and do together. We are and do together. Flourishing as we live and experience it in daily life is complex, dynamic, and relational. It depends on the circumstances in which we find ourselves. In ISAT, in addition to different goals for research, we build from a different set of traditions in design to embody our values that those who are impacted design should have a say in them. These include participatory design traditions, as well as longer-term collaborations between school districts and researchers. The latter are particularly important because we learn early rather than late what the requirements are in terms of the policies, social and technical infrastructures that are needed. And it also allows us to engage with people over the life cycle of the research and development endeavor. The specific approach to participatory design we are using is that of responsible innovation as articulated by Stilgo and colleagues. Responsible innovation means taking care of the future through collective stewardship of science and innovation in the present. We add that it also requires attention to the past and to human dignity, with an aim toward designing towards more just futures in education and society. It has 4 pillars. Anticipation entails considering not just how technologies might affect society in the future, but also new images of what society could be, and asking how technology might support those desired futures. Reflexivity entails being aware of the limitations of one's own perspectives for anticipating possible consequences of innovations and understanding the potential benefits and harms of an innovation. Responsiveness refers to the capacity of a team to adjust purposes, approach, and designs to be responsive to changing priorities and circumstances of stakeholder and public values. Inclusion entails asking whether those who should have something to say about the purposes of design to be present at the table. By including a wide range of stakeholders in design, visions and scenarios are more likely to reflect the complexity of possible effects and to help developers see the limitation of their own perspectives. At the Institute for Student AI Teaming, we are a National Science Foundation funded project, and we are one of 20 such institutes that have been funded across the United States. We were first out of the gate and one of 3 that were initially funded related to education. Here you see a picture from about 1.5 years ago of our whole institute team, which comes from 7 different institutions, as I mentioned. We're multidisciplinary, and we also include school district and community partners as core members of our team. The ISAT research program is organized to yield fundamental advances in AI. We're organized into 3 different strands of work. Strand 1 advances multimodal processing, natural language understanding, and knowledge representation to develop AI models that can autonomously monitor and support the unfolding collaborative learning processes at multiple levels. Our Strand 2 researchers advance the new science of student AI teaming by bringing together theoretical frameworks of collaboration, innovative interaction paradigms, and techniques for measuring and orchestrating effective student and teacher interactions with AI partners. Strand 3, of which I am a co-leader, advances new models of how to adopt responsible innovation and polycultural approaches by engaging diverse stakeholders, researchers, students, parents, and community leaders, all in co-design of ethical and equitable AI technologies. Our high-level conjecture is that AI can serve as a social collaborative partner in helping students and teachers to work and learn more effectively, engagingly, and equitably. One of the key technical challenges that is not to be underestimated is how we can understand multi-party, multimodal dialogue in real time and in noisy learning environments. One of our core AI partners, one of 2 that we've developed, is called the Community Builder. And I'm going to present a little bit about what it is and then walk you back to show how we got there, both to arrive at the goals for what COBE, as I'll refer to it from here on out, should do, and the design process we use to embody the responsible innovation model that I just reviewed. I think it'll be helpful to begin by showing a short video that explains COBE, the Community Builder.
In today's world, collaboration and teamworking skills are more important than ever. Whether you dream of becoming a scientist, an athlete, or musician, being able to collaborate effectively with others is key to achieving success. Collaboration means being able to get along with others when you work towards a common goal. It's about behaving in a way that brings out the best in everyone. Our team has spoken with many students about how technology could help make learning more engaging and fun. One idea that students had was to use technology for community building. So we created COBE, which stands for Community Builder. It uses microphones for speech recognition and language understanding to give feedback on how you and your peers can build community. COBE is rooted in the idea of community agreements. These are the rules that you believe should guide your small group projects in class. COBE can recognize 4 main agreement categories: respect, community, equity, and thinking. In order to use COBE, you first establish a list of agreements in each category. For equity, you might agree to give everyone the chance to contribute in their own way. But could it also be an example for respect? This is up to you to decide. Put the same agreement into more than one category if it makes sense to you. Anything that you think will help you create an atmosphere where everyone's unique perspectives and contributions are valued and celebrated. While you're working in small groups, COBE will analyze your conversations to recognize moments when you and your peers express one of your community agreements. And when you're done with the activity, you can review together as a class what COBE has noticed. Of course, your comfort and privacy are really important, and having a computer listen to you can feel intrusive. But COBE only listens to you if you give it permission, and you can always opt out from participating. Your personal information is always protected. Not only that, but as part of its design, COBE can only give feedback to the whole class and not to each student individually. Also, Kobe will not get things right every time, but just by using it in class, you can help us in making it better and better over time. Remember, collaboration and teamworking are important skills to have when you're in school, when you're out of school, later in your career, and overall in life. Kobe is designed to make collaborations in the classroom more fun and effective, and to help you grow these skills over time.
So while we have this beautiful image that I've just presented and actually an AI partner that functions in classrooms to help support students in reflecting on their collaboration, we absolutely didn't start here. At the time of our proposal, we imagined a key role for an AI partner in supporting collaboration to help keep students together when working in small groups. This made a lot of sense for us for a lot of reasons, not least of which is that this is a big challenge that teachers in large classes who assign small group collaborative work face. That is, keeping students on task. We also had a working model for automatically recognizing moves that human teachers did regularly to keep students together that we could build from. At the beginning of our project, we thought of the ideal AI partner to support collaboration as being a kind of sheepdog, and ultimately a shepherd, whose role was to keep the flock together. But we had built in some annual engagements into our grant that we called Learning Futures Workshops. As the name implies, a goal of these engagements was to provide a space for people to come together to envision possible futures for learning and to explore the role of AI in those futures. Our goal was to pose the question in these workshops: what should collaboration be and how should AI support it? Note the difference in the way we frame this question. This is not how can AI support learning, but it begins with a vision of what we want collaboration to be and what AI might do to support it. Our first workshop brought together 30 high school youth online during the midst of the pandemic in a 5-day interactive summer workshop that was spread over a 2-week period. Initially, youth themselves proposed a metaphor for the AI partner that was a lot like our initial shepherd idea. They said they wanted something that could keep other students on tasks, at least until when we asked them whether they would want such a partner to intervene on their own actions. After some probing, it turns out they wanted a partner instead that could affirm their ideas and support them and recognize their contributions. Still, it was hard for youth to imagine what good collaboration could look like beyond what they had experienced already in school. In late fall, after this initial workshop, I helped facilitate with 2 other colleagues in the Institute a design sprint with our Institute postdocs and graduate students to develop some new metaphors for the AI partner beyond the initial shepherd metaphor, and that were based on the initial ideas from our first Learning Futures workshop. One of those, a partner who could help build community, was inspired by students' desire to have an AI partner that could be affirming of a wide variety of contributions and encouraging them in group work. 2 other metaphors for the AI partner were being developed that came from that design sprint. As part of a second Learning Futures workshop the following spring, we took young people to a housing cooperative where one of our postdocs, Michael Chang, who was there at Berkeley and had lived, and where one member where membership in this co-op turned over on a regular basis. However, students noticed that there was a common community feeling and that there was a person who had been given the role of community builder. The young people met this person and they got really interested in the idea of community agreements for their classrooms, like the ones they saw posted and discussed by the community builder in the co-op, and that the community builder described. They wondered if the AI partner could help them to generate and maintain such agreements. And so young people helped us develop out the idea further of a community builder that could provide a form of visual feedback to students in how they were doing in their community building efforts in the classroom. We continued to engage partners in the development and testing of COBE, working closely with teachers who had been part of our research practice partnerships in 2 different school districts. Both partner districts' teachers have been using a week-long curriculum unit that allows students to investigate how computers sense the world and how sensors can be programmed and used to investigate students' own questions about the natural world and issues in their community. We turn to these teachers to help inform the design of a set of community agreement routines, that is, sequences of activities that they would lead with students to help generate and revisit agreements. In the routine, students and teachers are in the driver's seat, and COBE listens in and provides feedback to students and teachers in real time and also for later reflection. Students have the opportunities to train the partner directly to pay attention to behaviors that they agree are important and to tell COBE when the feedback given is off. In this way, we hope to foster agency and to provide a practice-embedded way for students to give ongoing input into COBE's design. To promote scaling and sustainability, our starting point for these community agreements came from Open CITE, a set of instructional materials that our team helped develop in science and that are used across the country. And our AI researchers and team scientists began to explore how to code interactions according to those agreements. They looked at how we could identify evidence related to the presence or absence of these agreements from a large corpus of data that we've been collecting from teachers implementing this unit. To implement the COBE AI partners requires fully automated, real-time analysis of small group collaborative discourse. It aggregates measurements across student groups and then uses interactive visualizations to communicate its findings. To support this work, teams across strands have coded and then trained algorithms to recognize utterances linked to the key categories of the community agreements. Strand 2 researchers developed front-end prototype designs that were used to inform the current versions of the AI partners. Specifically, our user experience design process blended agile software development processes with iterative user-centered design to develop, evaluate, and refine user interface mockups and prototypes for initial versions of the community builder. Meanwhile, researchers in strands 1 and 2 have continued to work on the necessary foundational work for enabling COBE to interpret students' multimodal meaning making. Strand 2 Learning Sciences developed and tested and refined the NICE framework, Nonverbal Interactions in Collaborative Learning Environments, a coding scheme to analyze nonverbal interactions during small group work. In parallel, Strand 1 Computer Sciences developed the Gesture AMR, or GAMER, an extension to abstract meaning representation that captures the meaning of gestures and human-object interactions used in multimodal communication. We've unified our two frameworks to identify and annotate nonverbal behaviors that are implicated in collaborative interactions between students and teachers in classroom settings. As a next step in our design process, we integrated the use of the tools alongside the routines into a set of problem-based curriculum units. We use an instructional model called storylines, which is a way of sequencing learning activities such that it is experienced by students as coherent from their point of view and designed to answer their questions about a presented phenomenon or problem. Beyond supporting students in respecting all voices in collaboration, an image of equity that has informed our work has been that of speculative world building. By world building, we mean that we seek to engage young people in building different kinds of futures, that is, worlds where they want to live and learn. Our AI and moderating gaming community units goals reflect this focus. Through a collaborative process with both youth and educators, we developed a unit both to teach about AI and in which our AI partners like COBE are integrated, in which students grapple with the demeaning and harmful experience of a Black girl on a public Minecraft server. We then ask them what kind of game worlds might we create together that avoid such harms and that allow everyone to feel a sense of belonging. Students explore in this unit different ways to moderate communities, and along the way they learn how AI has been used with varying degrees of success to moderate online communities. In the unit, students' own discussion of the online world mirrors their engagement with each other's, supported by an AI partner to support critical reflection on how they want to be together as a community in and outside the classroom. Embedding the use of our AI partners for supporting collaborative knowledge building within a broader instructional unit is an essential part of the vision for ISAT in terms of supporting students in developing, understanding of, critiquing, and building AI. In addition to the moderating games units, there are 2 other units that make use of COBE as a support to the many small group collaborative learning activities embedded within the units. Again, following the storyline model, we organize each unit around students' anticipated questions related to a distinct design challenge pertinent to a societal issue that many students may have direct experience with using a model of guided inquiry. The design challenges themselves embody the ideal of positioning young people as actors who can contribute to, and through their contributions, build more inclusive and just communities. The focus on learning about AI through these challenges and in the context of using AI gives developers direct input into students' own perspectives on whether and how AI might be useful for collaboration, as well as when it might be biased. Throughout the curriculum materials in which COBE is embedded, there are opportunities for engaging with, reflecting on, and critiquing COBE's output. Here you see an image of students right after a lesson when COBE has been turned on. The unit they're working on, the AI moderation unit, engages students in thinking about the AI systems that are guiding interactions in online spaces. After they work with COBE, they come up and look at its outputs. They were able to engage in conversations by asking questions like, what kind of moderation is COBE? What is it detecting? With what accuracy? What's it doing behind the scenes? How can we make it better? Here, our AI partner is not a black box that generates a one-way output to students. Rather, it's a tool that facilitates deeper conversation about what it means to be committed to collaborative norms that are at the heart of constructivist or knowledge-building forms of teaching and learning. And it's a tool that invites exploration of AI and its underlying mechanisms. Learning, how might this approach support flourishing? For one, learning to work together in activities where young people feel respected and are treated well and contribute their ideas to solving meaningful problems of how we live together. That is really the heart of a definition of flourishing. There is another way in which we contribute to flourishing, and that is the voice that we give to participants who are part of the participatory design process and part of our professional learning and part of the enactment that we support, that support humanizing environments where people's ideas are taken seriously and then embodied and taken up in design. How will we know if this actually works? We are in the middle of a quasi-experimental study in a couple of different school districts to test the efficacy of COBE, supporting collaboration. We're using several measures of collaboration here, some that are automatically coded on the left, as well as some self-report measures, including perception of adherence to community agreements. So far, one of the things that we're seeing especially is an increase in students' perception of adherence to these community agreements. But we're still collecting data in this very school year, and that's part of that study. We're also finding through our work that we need to foster dynamic learning environments to reach this goal. On the bottom left, we see that we need a rich curriculum materials that tackle questions and phenomena that students are interested in, something that really invites and builds on their everyday experiences. You need an AI partner that isn't just a black box, but something that can be interrogated and questioned and opened up for inquiry. We need to support teachers in enacting these AI partner embedded materials and provide ample learning opportunities to do their own learning about AI. Last, we need to leverage and build on student experiences in order to support their own learning. This is really important. The AI partner we've developed can't stand on its own to reach our goals for students. We need to think about how all these pieces fit together to enable meaningful learning that supports flourishing. That requires a serious consideration of how the tools we develop can be embedded within materials to foster more equitable collaboration among students. It means that on the back end, we need to train and retrain our models on different curricular contexts so that they can begin to generalize across disciplines. Reflexivity and responsiveness are key elements of responsible innovation, and we built in opportunities for both throughout our participatory design processes. We engage in collaborative sense-making with educator partners about implementation challenges in the field, adjusting our approach and building in new supports as needed, such as the classroom routines that I described for building and revising community agreements. To be responsive to teachers' instructional and school realities, we've built in time within professional learning workshops for them to adapt units to different content areas. As an example, a recent workshop with our moderating games unit included English language arts teachers, mathematics teachers, and STEM teachers, each of whom had different curricular goals that they had to meet. We supported teachers to adjust the units and emphasize the importance of productive adaptation to meet standards and student needs over fidelity of implementation. In reflecting on our own processes of design, a key observation has been that we are closest to embodying the principles of responsibility. When we are closest, we're not just engaged in spanning boundaries between research and practice. We are also engaged in a lot of internal boundary spanning. Key roles have been played by individuals in helping people with different disciplinary backgrounds make sense of and interpret the implications of Learning Futures Workshop for Design. Often, these people themselves have interdisciplinary preparation that help them play these roles. In addition, the intentional design of interdisciplinary spaces to move from prototype to development and testing has enabled the team to stay responsive to practitioners and to youth. Responsible innovation is often talked about in terms of outward-facing processes, such as our engagement with youth and educators. These partnerships are indeed indispensable, but what tends to get overlooked are the internal protocols and systems that are vital for an organization to be responsive to what it learns from community partners. As a research and development collaboration that included so many different institutions and more than 100 members, organizational inertia and the desire for efficiency could have easily encouraged us to focus on an on-task AI partner or any of the other multitude of ideas that conformed with schools as they exist today. Many of our internal systems, however, created opportunities for intentional pauses where we could learn from each other. Significantly, these moments allow the whole team, including those who are often furthest from community partners, to engage with what others in the Institute were learning from our extended involvement with youth and educators. As responsible innovation and co-design gain prominence in AI development, one of the most vital lessons from our Institute is the importance of internal collaborative processes that allow organizations to be open and responsive to external partners' visions of schools as they could be. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bill. So now we have some time for questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Professor. I really like your speech, and I think your presentation has given me a lot of inspiration. I really like the idea of a storyline. You involved students to build a storyline to elicit what they anticipate of learning. So I am wondering, how did you do that when you, at the very first beginning, students may not have that much AI knowledge or any technical knowledge to know what to expect or what to anticipate? Thank you.
So the collaborative development of the storyline instructional model and the collaborative design of the instructional units actually is typically done with adults to begin with in terms of the co-design. We did involve young people in the co-design of some of these units. But I want to highlight, we absolutely present things to students that they don't understand, and we throw them in the deep end of the pool, so to speak, to actually grapple with the challenge. This is a form of learning that Bransford and Schwartz calls challenge-based learning, and it motivates a need for them to learn about something. But we don't know, without doing some initial iterative testing, we don't know what are the right problems to present to students such that they will pose questions, the answers to which will require them to develop and use AI knowledge. That is the art and science, if you will, of building a storyline that we've iterated on and developed over the course of about 10 years between my group and a group at Northwestern University called the Next Gen Storylines Group, led by Dr. Brian Reiser. So what we try to do is we work with input from students to choose an anchoring problem or phenomenon. we actually rehearse the very first lesson of that, and we build a set of what we call a driving question board with students at that. And we look at those questions and we ask ourselves, will the answers to these questions help students develop AI knowledge? And if we don't get that quite right, we will tweak that opening lesson quite a bit. And then we will develop a series of lessons that are based on the anticipated student questions. And we find that in practice, we can anticipate between 70 and 80% of those questions if we have 2 iterations of development with our process, and we do some rehearsals with either adults or students of that first lesson. That may be a longer answer than you expected, but there are some papers out there that Brian Reiser and I have written on this process.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Dear Professor William, thank you so much for your inspiration. I'm one of the scholars from Macau. I would like to ask about your design of the personalized learning ITS. So I have learned from like U of Toronto, have another team guided by the Assistant Professor Joseph J. Williams to create such as a booklet framework to help personalize and improve learning experiences. And what are the main differences between the system that you designed to be adaptable and personalized and the booklet designed by the other team? Thank you so much.
Yes. Our system is not designed to be personalized. It is designed to be supportive of reflection on collaborative activity that emerges in the classroom. That's the big difference between the kind of ITS system that is common and are being developed and proliferating now, thanks to ChatGPT making it really easy to do development within them, and the kind of system that we have. Recall the beginning picture of the scissors? It's so hard for us to even think about systems that aren't aiming for personalization. I would argue that a one-on-one relationship between a student and a computer is only one way that we might want kids to be learning. I think it's really important for us to be learning face-to-face with each other, where an AI is more in the background, listening in as Kobe does, and then being brought back in to support reflection and group awareness. So it isn't about personalization at all. It's not the goal.
Thank you. Well, actually, I think this is a very important difference. A lot of times people have this, actually, I usually shudder when people talk about personalization because it's it could be a very mechanistic way of thinking about learning. Yeah. Actually, I do personally have a question. Maybe I can take advantage of this opportunity. Yeah. So, I mean, you talk about the storyline sort of approach, which sounds, I mean, this is the first time I've heard about it, which sounds quite interesting. And I'm not entirely clear, say you were talking about the Kobe giving some feedback to the students. Can you say a little bit more about what kind of moderation? I mean, it's the first questions that your students ask. So what kind of moderation does the Kobe provide?
Right. So what it does is actually just provides a visualization. I didn't show those today, but we have like a radar graph, for example, that shows in relative strength of these different areas where there are more positive behaviors in, say, respect or supporting our thinking or equity. We also have a tree visualization, and the tree will produce a flower of a different color depending on the type of agreement that it recognizes and affirms. Kobe only looks for positive examples, and that is in relation to what students actually said they wanted, which was they wanted something affirming. And so we have a set of routines where the teacher can walk students through making use of the visualizations as a basis of reflection. And there are 2 kinds of reflection broadly. One is just how did we do together? What are our strengths? What do we want to do better on next time? We say, oh, we didn't have very many examples of respect. What would it mean for us to show respect? So really it's the occasion for a conversation that's grounded in evidence that's collected. The second kind of reflection is this speaking back to Kobe. We can show every utterance that was coded back to students and say, what did Kobe get right here? Do you agree with Kobe right now? And this is helping to, not in real time, but retrain Kobe and give feedback on how the categorization is going. And Kobe presents to them confidence and word error, or word confidence, as well as the confidence in the category. So it's really making transparent the probabilities that Kobe is getting something right, and kids can actually make a judgment about it too.
Thank you. So in other words, the feedback is in fact very much connected to the sort of collaboration agreement.
Exactly. It's based on their small group work. And small group collaborative knowledge building is a big part of Storyline's instructional model, is that we're trying to get kids to talk and work together. And one of the things I can say in a separate set of studies with Brian Reiser's team that we found is that in classrooms that are really successful with this model, they have good working community agreements. And those are actively maintained and monitored by the teacher and the students. So Kobe is really kind of a support for that. I don't think Kobe can make that happen where it doesn't exist. It's not a miracle worker, but it definitely supports the process of reflection on the community agreement process.
Thank you, Professor. A very enlightening and very insightful presentation. I have a question because your tool is about community building. And in every community, there are dominant voices and missing voices. So how do we account for those students who perhaps within that community are struggling to share their perspectives? And what if the system is somehow missing those perspectives? So is there any proper mechanism we have in your framework that we can account for those missing voices?
That's a wonderful statement. That's great. And I think it's very true that in small group collaborative work, if you look carefully at that work, you will find a lot of status issues going on, domination, people sitting out. So there are a couple of ways that shows up. One is in our kind of category of equity, where people think actively about what it means for people to participate, what it means to be respectful and lift people up and not put them down. So those are actually right in the community agreements. I also want to mention that I didn't talk about one of our other tools called the GIA tool, which is a Jigsaw interactive agent. Jigsaw is a cooperative learning method designed especially to address status differences in small group collaborative work, both by giving everyone a role and by also lifting up voices that might be quiet. Our GIA tool is actually a live interactive partner that actually listens in for missing voices and also encourages people lifting up of ideas that might not be getting the attention that they deserve in a group, pointing out ideas that are maybe in tension with one another in the group, not entirely consistent. And so this is a different tool. The GIA tool will intervene in that way. And we've just been in classrooms this spring with GIA, and so far students are really appreciating the interventions, and it is capturing some of these kinds of things that you're talking about.
Thank you. I think there is another question over there. Yeah, Lucas.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the inspiring talk. And obviously, Kobe is a very, very nice tool that I'm sure a lot of instructors would love to have in the classroom. But I do have a weird question because there's a documented literature about kids trying to mess up with the systems and trying to gaming the systems and try to break the systems. I wonder if you have I've seen those in your implementations.
Yeah. For sure, at the beginning, right? We see kids like saying into their microphone, I love you, I love you, I love you, trying to game the Kobe system. But after a while, they're mostly kind of, they don't pay too much attention to Kobe listening in. And it really also just varies by the classroom culture. I said Kobe's not a miracle worker. I watched video where clearly they're not great community agreements in place, and Kobe is not helping in that situation, and they're not aware. You know, they're talking to each other in ways that are disrespectful, etc., in ways that Kobe's not fixing and are still going on, and clearly nobody's trying to game that system at that point. So I think at first, yes, with novelty, it will happen, but I'm not sure that it happens unless, of course, you were to suddenly assign a grade to Kobe, and I would never want to see that happen.
For the opportunity. Thanks, Professor PENUEL, for the very inspiring talk. Is Kobe now only recording students' dialogue data? I want to build on the question actually Ali asked about the students' participation in collaborative learning processes. They may have different kind of way to engage in the process. Also, maybe related personality, like if I'm a little bit introvert student, I maybe do more like maybe reading, writing, but not talking, but active listening, learning. And then I'm wondering, like I say, how Kobe may be thinking about to maybe taking maybe multimodal data and then to providing feedback and engaging in students. And also if we plan to do that, if you plan to do this, what could be the potential challenge, particularly in the classroom setting? Things can be really dynamic. And then, really appreciate your insights on this. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Yeah, of course, you're missing a lot by just checking the verbal channel. So two areas that we've worked on have been both eye gaze and gesture. And James Shutovsky from Brandeis University has been leading the effort for our Strand 1 researchers to identify a model of what's called situated grounding, to be able to understand what are the dialogue acts going on here, how are people working with each other. I will say that, you know, this is it does invite us to think about what do we count as equitable collaboration. We were very careful not to define that as equal parts of talking, right? That we have to think about that in a more nuanced way, how it is that people participate and contribute. And I'd say we're still working on that. I think that's, and I'd say the field is still working on thinking about what that means.
Thank you. I'm sure that many of you would want to ask questions, but time is running out. And I really want to thank Professor PENUEL. We've been thinking a lot about AI, and oftentimes the critique of AI is that it is actually alienating people. So people are just, interacting with the machine. But now we have the research on how technology can in fact help us understand and support better collaboration and better teaming. So I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation after this, but thank you very, very much. Thank you.